Captain William Grant stood at the viewport of the UEF Dauntless, watching the stars. His weathered face showed little emotion, but his eyes revealed the storm within. Behind him, the bridge crew worked in tense silence. "Sir, incoming transmission," said Lieutenant Olivia Wright, her voice breaking the quiet. You need to see this." Grant turned as the main screen flickered to life. The image showed a simple metal platform surrounded by alien creatures with scaled skin and multiple eyes. At the center stood a human man, John Martinez, a scientist who had volunteered for the diplomatic mission 3 weeks ago. "This is a broadcast on all frequencies," Wright explained. "They want everyone to see." The aliens, known as the Xarthul, had encountered humanity only 6 months earlier. Initial contacts had been cautious but promising. Martinez had gone as part of a scientific exchange. On screen, a tall Xarthul approached Martinez. The alien spoke in a series of clicks and hisses that the ship's computer translated. "Let all humans witness the price of defiance. Your kind will leave our territory immediately or face extinction." Grant clenched his fists as the Xarthul produced a device that shot blue flames. Martinez looked directly at the camera, his eyes somehow calm despite his fear. "Don't let them use this to control you," he said clearly. "Earth must stand firm." The crew watched in horror as the flames engulfed Martinez. His screams lasted only seconds, but they echoed in Grant's mind long after the screen went dark. "They're broadcasting this across the entire sector," Wright whispered. "Every human ship, colony, and outpost can see it." Grant looked around at his crew. Some wept quietly. Others stared in shock. A few showed the same cold anger he felt building inside himself. "They think they understand us," he said finally. "They think this display will frighten us into running away." He walked to his command chair and sat down, his movements deliberate and controlled. "Send a message to Fleet Command. Include the full broadcast. Tell them we need reinforcements, but we are holding position." "Sir," Wright looked surprised. "The Xarthul outgun us 5-1 in this sector." "I'm aware, Lieutenant." Grant's voice was iron. "But if we run now, we tell them their tactics work. We tell them that burning one human will make the rest of us flee in terror." He looked at the blank screen where Martinez had died moments before. "Communication to all ships in our battle group. We maintain position and prepare defensive formations. No aggressive moves, but we don't back down. Not a single inch." As the orders went out, Grant thought about human history. How often someone had tried to use fear as a weapon against humanity. How consistently it had failed. "They don't understand what they've done," he said quietly to Wright. "Throughout our history, this kind of act doesn't create fear. It creates unity." Wright nodded slowly. "They expect us to scatter like frightened animals." "Instead," Grant said, looking at the star map showing Xarthul territory, "they've just transformed every human in the galaxy into a weapon aimed at their empire." He stood again, addressing the entire bridge crew. "Martinez gave his life believing humanity would stand strong. We will not dishonor that sacrifice. The Xarthul thought burning a human would scare us into submission." His eyes hardened. "They're about to learn how wrong they are." Admiral Hither Powell walked into the emergency meeting room at Earth Defense Headquarters. Military leaders from all 5 space fleets sat around the large oval table, their faces grim. On the wall screen, the recording of John Martinez's execution played on a loop with the sound muted. "Turn that off," Powell ordered. A junior officer quickly complied. Powell took her seat at the head of the table. At 63, she had fought in the Mars Rebellion and the Asteroid Belt Crisis. Her short gray hair and stern face showed a woman who had seen too much war, but her eyes burned with a new fire. "The Xarthul have made their position clear," she said. "They expect us to run away after their display of cruelty. I've called you here to make our position equally clear." General Rick Howard from the North American Defense Force leaned forward. "Admiral, the Xarthul fleet outnumbers ours 3-1. Their weapons technology is slightly more advanced. A full-scale war would cost millions of lives. Powell nodded. I'm aware of the numbers, General. I'm also aware of human history. Who can tell me what happens when someone tries to frighten humans into submission by killing one of us brutally and publicly? The room fell silent. It backfires, said Commander Susan Reyes from the Pacific Alliance. Every time. From ancient history to modern conflicts, public executions designed to terrorize us have always united humans instead of dividing us. Exactly, Powell said. The Xarthul have conquered 17 other species using these tactics. They expect us to behave like their previous victims. She stood up and walked to the tactical display. We're going to show them that humans are different. The display lit up with star maps showing Xarthul territory and human colonies. We have confirmed that the Xarthul believe we are gathering our ships to retreat, Powell continued. Their psychology cannot comprehend any other response to their dominance display. This gives us an advantage. She touched the display, highlighting a small outpost at the edge of Xarthul space. Rigel 7. Lightly defended. Strategically valuable. And the location where they first captured Martinez. Powell looked around the room. I propose Operation Firestarter. A quick, surgical strike not to kill, but to capture. Show them we can reach into their territory at will. General Howard frowned. That's deep in their space, Admiral. Which is why they won't expect it, Powell replied. They think we're running away. Instead, we're going to hit them where they feel safest. Commander Reyes nodded slowly. Psychological warfare. They tried to frighten us with Martinez's death. We show them it had the opposite effect. What about the civilian population on Rigel 7? Asked Fleet Captain Alan Rivera. The Xarthul have at least 10,000 civilians there. We avoid civilian casualties at all costs, Powell said firmly. This isn't about revenge. It's about sending a message that their tactics won't work on humans. She turned back to face the room. The Xarthul must learn that humans don't break under pressure. We become something else entirely. One by one, the military leaders nodded their agreement. Captain Grant and the UEF Dauntless will lead the mission, Powell concluded. His crew witnessed Martinez's death. They deserve to deliver our response. As the meeting ended, General Howard approached Powell privately. The Xarthul truly don't understand what they've done, do they? Powell's expression was grim. No. They thought burning the human would scare us into surrender. Instead, they've united humanity like nothing in the past 100 years. They'll learn, Howard said quietly. Yes, Powell replied. And the lesson will be painful. Commander Lisa Rice checked her tactical display one final time. The 12 members of her special operations team waited silently in the dropship, each focused on their own pre-mission rituals. Some checked weapons, others sat with eyes closed in meditation. 5 minutes to insertion. The pilot's voice came through the comm. Rice looked at her team. Elite soldiers handpicked from all Earth Defense Forces. They had trained together for 3 weeks for this mission. Remember, she said, this is not about revenge. We go in clean and precise. Minimal casualties on both sides. The Xarthul outpost on Rigel 7 appeared on her display, a sprawling facility with 4 main buildings and a central command center. Intelligence suggested light defenses. The Xarthul never expected to be attacked here, deep in their territory. They think we're running scared, Rice told her team. That's our advantage. The dropship slipped through the planet's atmosphere, its stealth systems masking their approach. 3 small EMP devices had already been deployed, taking out the outpost's long-range sensors and communications. 30 seconds, the pilot announced. Rice felt the familiar calm before action. For Martinez, she said quietly. The team repeated the words. Not a battle cry, but a solemn promise. Inside the Xarthul command center, Commander Daxter was annoyed. The sensor outage was inconvenient, though not concerning. Technical failures happened occasionally on frontier outposts. "Run a system restart," he ordered a subordinate. His 4 eyes blinked independently as he returned to reviewing reports about the human retreat. The pathetic creatures were behaving exactly as expected. After the execution of their scientist, human ships were consolidating, clearly preparing to withdraw from the sector. Daxter clicked his mandibles in satisfaction. Another victory for the superior XR-full approach to expansion. The first sign something was wrong came when the lights flickered. The second was the faint hiss as the atmospheric seals on the command center doors were overridden. Before Daxter could react, 12 humans in advanced combat armor materialized in the room, weapons raised but not firing. "Nobody move," Rise announced, her translator converting her words to the clicking language of the powerful. "This facility is now under human control." Daxter froze in shock. This was impossible. No species ever counterattacked after a dominance display. It violated all rules of conflict as the Exarthal understood them. "You cannot be here," he said, mandibles clicking rapidly in distress. "Your kind should be retreating." Rise approached him slowly. "That's what you expected, isn't it? You thought burning one human alive would frighten all of us." She gestured to her team, who were efficiently securing the room, disarming the Exarthal but treating them with firm professionalism rather than cruelty. "My name is Commander Lisa Reyes. I knew John Martinez. He was a scientist who wanted peaceful contact with your people." She stood directly in front of Daxter now. "You killed him thinking it would make us run away." Daxter's inner eyelids fluttered in confusion. "That is how it works. That is how it has always worked." "Not with humans," Rice said simply. Within 30 minutes, the entire outpost was secured. The human team had taken control with only 3 minor injuries among the Exarthal and none among their own. The remaining Exarthal were contained but unharmed in their residential quarters. Rice stood in the communications center and activated the outpost's long-range transmitter. Her message would reach the Exarthal High Command within hours. "To the leaders of the Exarthal Empire, you believe the public execution of John Martinez would frighten humanity into submission. Instead, it has united us. This outpost now belongs to the United Earth Forces. We could have killed everyone here. Instead, we choose restraint. Remember this when you consider your next move. Humans are not like the others you have conquered. We do not break under fear. We transform." As the message transmitted, Rise looked at Daxter, who watched her with all 4 eyes wide in disbelief. "You still don't understand, do you?" she asked. "What are you?" Daxter whispered. "Something you've never encountered before," Rise answered. "And your empire's worst mistake." Kevin Chen sat quietly in the war room as military officers argued around him. 3 weeks had passed since the capture of Rigel 7, and the human counteroffensive was gaining momentum. 7 of Exarthal systems had fallen with minimal casualties on both sides. Chen had never expected to be here. Before the conflict, he had been a professor of human psychology and history at Oxford University. Now he served as the chief civilian advisor to Admiral Powell, applying his knowledge of human nature against an enemy that fundamentally misunderstood it. "The Exarthal are withdrawing from the Arcturus sector," General Howard reported, pointing to the holographic map. "They're consolidating forces around their core systems." "They still don't understand what's happening," Chen said softly. Every head turned toward him. He rarely spoke in these meetings, but when he did, everyone listened. "Explain, Professor," Admiral Powell requested. Chen stood and walked to the display. His slender frame and gentle manner contrasted sharply with the military personnel around him. "The Exarthal have a psychology based on dominance and submission," he began. "Their evolutionary path rewarded clear hierarchies. When they encounter a new species, they demonstrate their power through a public execution. In their experience, this always works because the other species recognizes them as the dominant predator." Chen adjusted the display to show Exarthal territory before and after human contact. For 17 consecutive species, this approach succeeded. The pattern was always the same: dominance display, followed by submission or limited resistance, then conquest. He looked around the room. But humans evolved differently. We're social predators with complex emotions. Throughout our history, public executions meant to terrorize us have instead united us. The Exarthal stumbled upon one of the few actions guaranteed to create absolute human solidarity. But surely they're adapting their strategy now, Captain Rivera argued. They must see that it backfired. Chen shook his head. That's what makes this situation so unusual. The Exarthal literally cannot comprehend a species that responds to dominance displays with increased resistance. It violates their most basic understanding of how intelligent life behaves. He brought up intelligence reports showing confused communications between Exarthal commanders. Look at these intercepted messages. They're still trying to understand why we didn't retreat. Some believe we simply didn't witness Martinez's execution properly. Others think we're too primitive to understand the message. None of them have considered that their entire approach is fundamentally flawed when dealing with humans. Admiral Powell leaned forward. How do we use this to end the conflict quickly? The Exarthal need to experience something they've never encountered before, Chen explained. A species that is powerful enough to destroy them, but chooses restraint instead. This violates everything they understand about predator-prey relationships. He highlighted several key Exarthal worlds. Each time we capture a system and treat the civilian population with respect, rather than dominance, we create cognitive dissonance in their leadership. They cannot fit our behavior into their understanding of how the universe works. So we're not just fighting a military campaign, Commander Rice realized. We're forcing an entire species to reconsider their worldview. Chen nodded. Exactly. The Exarthal burned John Martinez alive thinking it would frighten us into submission. Instead, they've encountered a unified human response that their psychology cannot process. He closed the display and looked at the military leaders. They thought a simple display of cruelty would break our will to resist. Now they face something they've never seen before, a species that grows stronger when threatened and shows mercy when victorious. Admiral Powell stood. Then we continue as planned. Precise strikes, minimal casualties, and respect for civilian populations. Yes, Chen agreed quietly. The Exarthal tried to teach us fear. Instead, we will teach them something they've never encountered in 17 conquests. And what's that? Asked General Howard. Humanity, Chen replied simply. Supreme Commander Vexcor stood before the tactical display, all four of his eyes fixed on the expanding human territory. What had begun as an annoyance had become a crisis. 23 Exarthal systems lost in just 40 days. Impossible, he hissed, mandibles clicking in agitation. Around him, his war council stood in postures of submission, heads lowered, secondary limbs tucked close to their bodies. None dared speak. Failure in the Exarthal hierarchy was punished severely. How? Vexcor demanded. How have these soft creatures defeated our forces so quickly? General Krulvex, commander of the 4th Fleet, risked speaking. Supreme Commander, the humans use tactics we have never encountered. They target our command structures with precision strikes while leaving civilian populations untouched. Weakness, Vexcor spat. When you conquer, you demonstrate power over all. Yet they advance while we retreat, another officer said quietly. Vexcor was about to respond when the main communication screen activated without permission. The face of a human appeared. An older male with dark skin and a serious expression. Supreme Commander Vexcor, the human said. I am Admiral Frank Wilson of the United Earth Forces. I believe it's time we spoke directly. Vexcor's inner eyelids flickered in shock. The humans had hacked their secure communications network, something no species had ever accomplished. You dare intrude on Exarthal command communications, he growled. We dare much, Wilson replied calmly. You've left us little choice. Your empire attacked unprovoked and executed one of our scientists publicly. Did you truly believe this would frighten us into submission? Vexcor felt something unfamiliar, doubt. Every species before had responded to the dominance display as expected. These humans were different in ways he couldn't understand. What do you want? He asked finally. I'm authorized to discuss terms for peace, Wilson said. Despite what you've done, we don't seek the destruction of your civilization. This was incomprehensible to Vexcor. The humans had the advantage. In exarthal warfare, this meant they should be demanding total surrender and preparing to enslave the defeated. You could continue fighting, Wilson continued. But our intelligence suggests you've already moved your egg clutches and cultural artifacts to sanctuary worlds. You know you cannot win this war. Vexcor's mandibles clicked rapidly in distress. How could they know about the evacuation? It had been conducted with the highest secrecy. What terms? He asked, his voice lower now. Withdrawal from all contested systems, return of any human prisoners, a demilitarized zone between our territories, and reparations for the death of John Martinez and others killed in this unnecessary conflict. And if we refuse? Wilson's expression remained calm. Then we continue until your empire falls. Make no mistake, Commander, we can and will dismantle the Xarthal Empire if necessary. But we would prefer not to. After the transmission ended, silence filled the war room. Finally, Kralvek spoke. Supreme Commander, our latest intelligence reports indicate the humans have been holding back. Their main fleet has not yet engaged. The forces we face are only their forward elements. Vexcor moved to a private view screen and called up the human broadcasts that had been intercepted over recent weeks. Each showed the same pattern: humans uniting, resources mobilizing, but always with leaders speaking of measured response and proportional force. For the first time in his long military career, Vexcor faced an enemy he did not understand. The humans should have fled after witnessing Martinez's execution. Instead, they had become something terrible and unstoppable. Prepare a response to the human admiral, he ordered. We will consider their terms. As his officers hurried to obey, Vexcor stared at the image of John Martinez that the humans broadcast regularly. One death was meant to frighten an entire species. Instead, it had transformed them into the most formidable enemy the Exarthal had ever faced. We misunderstood them completely, he whispered to himself. And now we may pay the ultimate price. The massive Exarthal defense fleet hung in space around their homeworld. 500 warships formed a protective shell around Sarthas Prime. Behind them, civilian evacuation vessels streamed toward the jump points, carrying the youngest generation and the Empire's most precious cultural artifacts. Supreme Commander Vexcor stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Dominant Will. His normally proud posture was gone, replaced by the slight stoop of exhaustion. 6 months of constant retreat had worn him down. They have entered the system, reported his sensor officer. Vexcor nodded. He had expected this. The human advance had been relentless but measured. They never rushed, never overextended. They simply kept coming, unstoppable as the tide. How many ships? He asked. 123, Supreme Commander. Vexcor's inner eyelids blinked in surprise. Their intelligence had indicated the humans could bring at least 300 vessels to this final battle. Why would they approach with inferior numbers? Visual confirmation, ordered Vexcor. The main screen activated, showing the approaching human fleet. At its center was a ship Vexcor recognized from intelligence reports, the UEF Dauntless, the same vessel that had witnessed John Martinez's execution. Open communications, Vexcor said quietly. The face of Captain William Grant appeared on screen. The human looked tired but determined. Supreme Commander, Grant acknowledged with a slight nod. You've ignored our attempts at negotiation for 2 weeks. We're here to receive your answer. Vexcor's mandibles clicked nervously. You come to our homeworld with a fleet half the size of our defense force and demand answers. Grant's expression didn't change. We come with exactly the force necessary. No more, no less. Your surrender can be transmitted at any time. Vexcor felt anger rise within him. Even now, at the edge of defeat, the humans continued to behave in ways that defied Sarthal understanding. You speak of surrender when we outnumber you 4-1, he demanded. Numbers aren't everything, Commander, Grant replied calmly. But if it concerns you, the sensor officer suddenly cried out. Supreme Commander, jump points forming. Hundreds of them. Vexcor watched in horror as space tore open behind his defense fleet. 200 more human warships appeared, perfectly positioned to trap the Exarthal forces between them and the first human fleet. As I said, Grant continued, we brought exactly what was necessary. For the first time in his life, Vexcor understood real fear. Not the simple fear of personal harm, but the deep terror of having fundamentally misunderstood the universe and paid for it with his civilization's future. Why? He asked, his voice barely audible. Why not destroy us completely? Your kind has the power now. Grant's eyes showed something Vexcor couldn't recognize, an emotion the Exarthal had no name for. Because that's not who we are, the human captain said simply. You thought burning John Martinez would break our will to resist. It didn't. You thought we would behave like your previous conquests. We didn't. And now you think that victory would make us as cruel as you have been. It won't. Vexcor looked at the tactical display. His fleet was surrounded. The evacuation was only half complete. Millions of civilians remained on the planet below. What happens to my people if I surrender? He asked. They live, Grant answered. They keep their homeworld. They join the community of species as equals, not conquerors. The era of the Exarthal Empire ends, but the Exarthal people continue. Vexcor's senior officers watched him, waiting. In their eyes, he saw the same realization that had come to him. They had completely misjudged these humans from the beginning. Send the surrender signal, Vexcor ordered quietly. The war is over. As the message transmitted, he looked back at the human captain on screen. You are not what we thought you were, Vexcor admitted. No, Grant agreed. And that was your greatest mistake. Elizabeth Stern stood at the observation window of Unity Station. The massive space station orbited a neutral planet called New Harmony, halfway between Earth and Oxarthus Prime. 5 years had passed since the surrender. Below her, representatives from 26 different species moved through the main concourse. Humans walked alongside Exarthal, their former enemies now cautious allies. Other species from across the galaxy had joined what became known as the Galactic Concord. As Earth's ambassador to this new alliance, Stern often found herself explaining humanity to beings who still struggled to understand them. Ambassador Stern, a voice clicked behind her. Am I disturbing you? She turned to see Kexti, a young Xarthal diplomat. Like many of the younger generation, he had adopted modifications to his speech patterns to make his words clearer to human ears. Not at all, Kexti. Please join me. The Exarthal moved to stand beside her, his 4 eyes taking in the busy concourse below. Today is the anniversary, he said. 5 years since the peace treaty. Stern nodded. Also 5 years and 6 months since John Martinez died. Kexti's mandibles moved in the new gesture that Exarthal had developed to express regret, a concept they had rarely needed before meeting humans. I wish to understand something that still confuses many of my people, Kexti said. When we killed Martinez, why did humans respond as you did? In our history, such displays always produced submission. Stern smiled sadly. Come with me. There's something I want to show you. She led the young diplomat through the station to a quiet garden area. At its center stood a simple monument, a hologram showing John Martinez as he had lived. The scientist smiled from the image, his eyes kind and curious. Martinez spent his life trying to understand other species, Stern explained. He believed peaceful cooperation was possible between any intelligent beings. Kexti moved closer to the hologram. Then why did your people fight so fiercely after his death? This seems contradictory. That's the part your people never understood, Stern said gently. Humans aren't a simple species with predictable responses. We contain contradictions. We can be both peaceful and fierce, forgiving and unrelenting. She touched the control panel, and the hologram shifted to show Martins working in his laboratory, carefully examining alien plant samples. When your leaders killed him, they thought they understood human psychology. They believed we would respond with fear, as other species had before us. Instead, they triggered something unique to humans, our ability to transform grief into resolve. Kexti's inner eyelids flickered in thought. Our scholars now study human history. They found many examples of this response. Your people often unite most strongly when attacked. Yes, Stern agreed. Throughout our history, attempts to control humans through fear have typically backfired. We don't break under pressure, we transform. They walked back toward the main section of the station. All around them, the impossible had become reality. Former enemies working together, learning from each other. The most remarkable thing, Kexti said suddenly, was not your victory. It was what came after. You could have destroyed our civilization. Instead, you helped us rebuild as equals. Stern stopped and faced the young diplomat. That's the final lesson your people needed to learn about humans. We can be terrible enemies, but we can also be powerful friends. When you burned Martinez alive, you saw only one side of our nature. And now we see the other, Kexti acknowledged. My teachers say this understanding changed our civilization forever. Before humans, we knew only dominance or submission. You showed us a third path. As they reached the main hall, representatives from a dozen worlds gathered for the anniversary ceremony. The Galactic Concord, born from conflict but dedicated to peace, stood as living proof that understanding could grow from even the darkest beginnings. They thought burning the human would scare us into submission, Stern said quietly. Instead, it revealed who we truly are, not just warriors when threatened, but builders when given the chance for peace. Kexti's mandibles formed the sorrowful expression for deep respect. This is the lesson my people will never forget.